right, we ready? Okay. Here with another extreme statue. This is a Spider-Man villain, known as some crazy stuff going on here. But this is a This does not look good. Oh. Welcome to the Extreme Channel. My name is Mr. X. A big part of this channel is Extreme Collectibles. Here is an Extreme statue. And I'm looking at the camera right now. It kind of looks like he would be holding my head. You guys better buckle up because it's going to be a crazy review. So give me a second. While I have my second, you can check out these giveaways we're doing. We're giving away these two Venom statues. Make sure you've liked this video, you've subscribed to the channel, and you've hit that bell notification. Also, every month we give away Extrizes. These are extreme prizes. We give away little gift packets to 2 different people with some merchandise. All you have to do is comment on a video. The more videos you comment on, the higher your chances are to win. So if you've noticed, lately I've been going through Spider-Man stuff. I have a big Spider-Man collection that actually used to be behind me when I filmed over there, but now it's over there, and I eventually was going to get rid of that collection, but I'm planning on keeping it now, and I'm going to move it to my office when I move offices in a few months, pending the Modelo virus. And a lot of these Spider-Man pieces are from XM Studios, like this Sandman here. XM Studios kind of made the way with Spider-Man villains, and they did some of the lesser popular characters. And in the end, I don't know if it was a success or failure, so we're going to find out today. And the reason why I say that is some of these don't tend to sell for retail anymore. They actually sell under that. This guy's original retail was 990 Singapore dollars, or about 730, 750 US dollars. Plus, you usually pay a couple $100 shipping. So somewhere in that range of just under $900. However, I've seen him sell now for $600 shipped. And I have him. I've had him for a couple years. I don't understand why. I think he's fantastic. So if you don't want to watch any more of the review, Mr. X says fantastic. Done. See you tomorrow. But for those that want to stay tuned in, let's check him out. Now at the end of the video, I'm going to throw up some links of the previous Spider-Man pieces I was reviewing. And there's a few more to go, plus all the new ones that are coming in. Let's dive into the official review of this 1/4 scale Sandman statue from XM Studios. Now Sandman, as you guys know, is a Spider-Man villain. I'm not a huge Spider-Man comic guy unless it comes to Venom because he's one of my favorite characters. But I know the basics about Sandman, not only from some of the comics he crossed over on, but obviously the horrible Spider-Man 3 movie that came out. I said it. Now Sandman has the ability to manipulate sand at the molecular level. Part of it is actually his body. He can create weapons and shapes, and he can grow and do all this crazy stuff. And personally, I hate sand. I absolutely hate it. I think it gets in crevices. I think sex on the beach is one of the worst things that you can do, unless she's hot. Then it's okay. But XM Studios made 700 of these pieces, which I think maybe that's why it's not as popular, because he's a less popular character. The edition size, or ES, is incredibly high. Nowadays, they make edition sizes like in the 200 to 500 range. For example, I think that's one reason their Scorpion piece, I actually used to own this right here, was so popular. They only made 350 of these, and just like Sandman, he's a lesser known character. I actually don't own it anymore because I thought I was going to get rid of my Spider-Man collection, and I was able to sell him for twice what I bought him for. I couldn't resist. However, now that I'm keeping him, #regrets. So as always, we're going to start with concept on this piece. Now when it comes to concept, you want to say, is it accurate to the source material? And this is the comic version of him. Is it cool? Are they displaying the character's abilities? And kind of a no-brainer, let's take a look, but they are. So the base is completely made up of sand, and we'll talk about the paint and sculpt later. On the back of it, there is actually a barricade. I don't know why they added that, but we'll talk about that later. And as you move up, you don't see his feet because they're either underneath the sand or they've turned into sand. And he has his classic uniform on, brown pants, the green striped shirt. And as you move up, you have a couple things going on. One, you have a big concrete pillar in the middle, and I think they just added that for effect, so maybe he knocked down a building. But he's manipulating the sand. It's coming up behind him, essentially to maybe smash his victims. The way I have him displayed now, he's actually turned his hands into sand, one of them into a giant mace, and it is monstrous, as you can see. We'll look at the size when we get to design. And you'll notice I have a custom portrait on him, which we'll talk about, that is half sand, half human. So he's in a very action dynamic pose. And this is fantastic. I mean, it is really, really done well. If you want Sandman, how do you make him exciting? Well, you put him in a dynamic pose, you put him manipulating sand, you have him turning into sand, you have him attacking. I think they hit every nail on the head. And I talked about that concrete pillar in the middle. Like I said, it doesn't really serve a purpose, but I'm imagining what it would look like without it, and it would look a little more plain. So I think that was smart too. I love everything they did about the concept. I actually have to give the concept a 5 out of 5, an X. I think it is awesome. Now we're going to go into design, and I think there's some design things that people just don't care for. It's not that they're bad, but it just limits some of the aspects of collecting. So first and foremost, let's talk about the size. He's huge. He is huge for a secondary character. He takes up way too much space. But remember, if you took away some of those aspects, then it would reduce the greatness of the concept. So it's kind of a catch-22. And let's actually measure him. Now this is with specific switch out options. He has a number of switch out options, which we will talk about. But I'm gonna say he's almost 30 inches wide. And of course, it depends on how you display him. If you turn him like this, he would be 30 inches deep. But obviously, for maximum exposure, I think this or a little bit at an angle is probably the best way to go. He's also incredibly tall. At the top of this part right here, I'm gonna say he's about 22 inches. I guess that's not incredibly tall. How wide or deep, depending on how you display him, is another 13 inches. Now, if you're not digging how wide or deep his hands make him, there are actually switch out options. So first on the right hand, you have the huge hand of sand that you see displayed. And actually, here's a comparison next to my hand. And just so you guys know, I'm a Sasquatch. That's what people call me. I'm very large. But you can also do a normal sized human hand as well. And here's a stock photo because I kept this in the box. I don't think I'll ever display it. Now on the left hand, you have that giant mace made of sand, or a human hand. It came with two portraits. His first portrait here, again a stock photo, is his human portrait. And then you have the all sand portrait. And I wasn't a fan of these, so I saw someone selling some custom that were half sand, half human. This is what I have displayed. And I will always display this. So we'll look at some more close-ups with paint and sculpt. So it is cool. If you don't like the size of it, you can switch out, but you lose a lot of the concept. Now, one other big thing with the design is this piece that comes out, they had to create a really nasty seam line, and it's not horrible, but it is definitely there. Here's the picture right here. And I think another thing with this piece, and again, it's not a fault of the actual design, but it's a result of the design, is you cannot really display some of the awesome parts. Like if you displayed him like this, you wouldn't see his head, but then you see the sand attacking. If you displayed him like this, it's way too deep, you don't get a good full-on shot. So you almost have to display it like this or at an angle, and then you miss some of the stuff. Like even that barricade in the back, you'll never see. The design limits it some. So I think for those reasons, the design's a 3 out of 5. And honestly, I think they did a really good job with the design. I think this is the best that can be done on this statue. So it's not a fault of XM Studios. It's just a fault of creating this type of concept with the character. Now we're going to check out the paint and sculpt. And one really big thing, before I bought him, I was really curious, and I think most people that have owned him, will they get the sand right? Because that is the most important part. And just as a spoiler, I think they did. Let's look at the sand here. It's very texturized. I like the shading on it. The color's good. It looks like real sand. I think they did it very, very well. And it's interesting, it's not just on the bottom where it's piled together, but even as you see it go up his leg a little bit here, where almost his leg is kind of transformed into it. Here's the barricade really quick. This looks cheaper, but again, it's not really needed and you don't see it in the back, so I'm not gonna hold that against them. It doesn't look bad by any means. Let's look at that concrete pillar in the middle. This could have used some more texture. I think the color's a little bit of a miss on it. Almost has this reflective plastic type hue to it. They did have some rebar in here to mix it up. And I'm glad they put this in here, but I think they could have done a better job. But if you're staring at this as a focal point of the statue, you are totally missing the point. Let's look at his pants. His pants, I'm not a huge texture guy, but it could have used a little bit more texture on here as well. There's some tiny texture you really can't see. You can actually feel it. But they did a decent job with the creases and folds, the seam lines that are running up the sides. There could have been a little more differentiation in his pockets. His belt looks okay, average sculpt. And the colors just, they're boring because Sandman is boring. And the paint jobs, there's a little bit of overflow, but it's semi-clean, it's okay. What's interesting is the anatomy on his torso sucks. It's really disproportioned, it doesn't make sense. Part of it's muscular, part of it's fat, but you don't know if it's sand underneath there. So I think that's kind of, if it wasn't intentional, it was kind of an out for XM Studios that, oh, well, that's sand underneath there. But again, you have some cool folds going on the directionality of the costume. The green paint is fine, like I said with the pants, it's kind of boring. And you have some sand on the side that I didn't really show on, or talk about, that's on the pants that looks good. I like that they added this, and this makes you think that it is sand underneath his shirt, especially if you're displaying the sand switch outs. Here are some closer looks at these switch outs. They look pretty good. I'm very impressed actually. They continue that texture but give it decent definition to have the shapes that you want it to. Now let's look at his custom portrait here. The interesting thing about this is I don't know if this was a modification of one of the original portraits or if it was completely made from scratch. Now when you look at the hair on here and the skin, the colors, the sculpt, I'm not a fan of. And remember, this was not made by XM Studios. Even the teeth, I think there's definitely some opportunity there, the paint on the eyes. And I don't recall what the actual human portrait looks like. I really love where the head is bashed in the sand though. The sand's a little bit different color, very slightly different than the rest of the base, but you really can't tell. But it's almost T1000-like. I think I used T1000 in another recent video I did. So some crazy things, they did some things really excellent and then they missed some opportunity on some things. But I think first let's talk about the paint. Some of it's really boring, the pillar in particularly, and then some of the stuff on this custom head could definitely use some improvement, but the rest is really good. So I think I'm gonna balance it right in the middle. It's a 3 out of 5 on the paint, a very nice. So overall, you know, what's interesting is I'm actually going to throw in value to this piece as part of the overall score. We're not going to grade him based on value, but considering you can get him for like 600 shipped, and he's a massive 1/4 scale piece with tons of switch outs, with an awesome concept, some really interesting, unique stuff. He's a quintessential Spidey villain, I think, you know, part of the Sinister Six. I believe he's part of the Sinister Six. Honestly, I think the overall score is a 4 out of 5 on this piece, surprisingly. And I think the value is what puts it over to that next level. If you really like stuff like this, click on that Extreme Channel logo to subscribe, or you can check out some of these other videos of Spider-Man pieces. I will see you guys tomorrow. Take care.